Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to tackle this piece of opal here. It's a Coober Pedy, pretty nice multicolor. Looks like it'll probably be a bit of a pinfire. I've been doing a bit of flat lapping lately, and you should see videos of that on very soon. But this is the kind of stone that you come across where the flat lap ain't going to help you too much. We could get a pretty small stone out of some of the thicker sections of it and cab that up, but we would lose 99% of this opal. Most of it would just be gone, too thin, because we've got all of these little sand shelves all throughout it and they need to come out. You can't leave those in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the rotary tool out and Dremel away all of these little sandy inclusions and see what we come up with. We'll end up with a really unusual stone. And hopefully it's full of this beautiful multicolor. Hopefully it faces pretty well. It's Coober Pedy, so it should be okay. And it's the kind of stone you've got no idea how to tackle it on the flat lap, but with the Dremel you don't even need to switch your brain on. We're just going to attack sand until we see no more sand, and then we'll decide what we're going to do from there. Let me turn off the brain and switch on the tools. Alright, so away we go. The sand is not going to stand a chance to the 80 grit sintered diamond burr, but I'll show you how aggressive this thing is in a second. And instead of focusing on all the sand on this stone, because there's so much of it, we'll just be focusing on this big sand shelf here. So the one you see that goes deep into the stone, it's the life-threatening one for this stone. It goes right into the heart of it. We can get through it, but it's always going to be a question of what's left at the end and how thin we've had to go in that middle section. So we're going to start off with just drilling away at it pretty aggressively. To show you how aggressive this is, check this out. So this corner here, I'm going to push so hard and so fast that it's just going to absolutely stall the poor Dremel stylo. This doesn't happen on my actual pendant motor, but you can see it does stall a couple times, but if you just work it in there, it will absolutely melt away, kind of like you're working on plastic. It really doesn't care. These burrs will put up with whatever you put up against them. So in a way, you've got to be a little bit careful. You can see here, I'm taking it off, but I'm not targeting the sand necessarily. I'm targeting the opal around it. Every time I do target the sand, you'll see that huge plume of dirt just come off. But what I'm doing is I'm constantly checking what I'm removing until I hit the color. I noticed that it had a little bit of a lack of color in this top section, which is why I've decided to tackle it the way I have. And you can see I'm just constantly checking it. Eventually we're getting pretty close, and at this point you can start seeing the color bar coming through pretty well. So now I want to be quite conservative. I don't want to take too much down. What I'm going to do is just tidy up the face just so that I can see that color. It's always good to be able to see exactly what you're trying to keep. And then I'm just going to more dive in and focus on this sand until you can see here it's pretty much all gone. We've done an incredibly good job of getting through it. I was worried it was going to cut the stone in half, but it didn't quite. And then we're at this point here with no more sand. But if you look, the edges are still very jagged. There's still a little bit of potch across the surface. You can see it's getting quite thin in the middle, so it's got a bit of a window. What you want to do now is switch over to the 600 grit, because as you can see in this little corner here, it's all chipped. The 80 grit will chip. It is an aggressive burr, but this 600, way less risk. Now it's not impossible to chip with it, but it's far safer. So I do all of the edges as you can see, and then we'll rub over the face just quickly, but most of it is just focusing on these edges. The 200 grit resin burr can actually do a lot as well. So don't worry too much about the 600, it's a nice little step in between, because the 80 grit is quite aggressive. And then we're going to switch over to the hard resin burrs, so 200, 400, 800 and 1500. Now there's not a lot I want to say about these. You've got to hit all the surfaces with each of them to be able to progress. Skip over a spot and you'll see it right at the end, and that's no good. But for the purposes of this video, what I'm going to do is focus on the 400 grit, because the 400 grit is the critical stage. I used to say the 280 Nova, the black Nova, was the most important grit when it came to switching over from sintered diamonds to getting a full polish. In this case, that is now the 400 grit hard resin. The 200 is still quite rough, but the 400 grit itself it's very gentle. It will degrade quite quickly, and because it's the burr I use the most, it is going to be the one I replace the most as well. But you've got to get it down all the way to this frosted spot. This is the most important thing, and then just spot check it. Or if you're very inexperienced and you're a little bit scared because you cannot miss anything at this stage, you can just paint it black. You really need to get that even frosted finish. You can't leave any little chips, any little deep gouges, any scratches. It shouldn't look like a scratch. If it looks like a scratch, it's got to go. So you can see here all the green that's left behind, that's the burr wearing. It does wear pretty quickly, unfortunately. Good thing they're a bit bigger than the Nova points, so it actually probably lasts a bit longer, but every single tiny dot you can see, which is really easy to see on the Coober Pedy material, that all needs to go, and then you can switch over to the cerium oxide. I cannot stress it enough, that 400 grit is critical. If you miss any of those little black little permanent marker marks, you are going to finish the cerium oxide part and you're going to see all of these things that you just can't get rid of. Even if you see it or you spot it when you're up to the 1500 grit stage, you can't get rid of it. You have to go back. Have to go back to that 400 and work your way back up. The 800 could possibly fix a few really minor things, but it would take so long and you're just going to degrade your 800 a lot. It is better just to go straight to that 400. If you see any kind of markings that you don't like the look of, the default position is always go back to the 400. The 200 is too much. That almost acts like the 600 grits into diamond. You really don't want to go back that far. It's just a little bit softer and a little bit kinder in terms of chipping. But that 400 is where you want to get that frosty look. If you can't get frosted, you're not going to get a polish. But if you nail that, you have a really good time, and we can have a look at how this stone turned out. It was a pretty good time in the end. Alright, we're at an end of another cut and it's worked out pretty well. So this is the front face of it, this is the back. The back is a little bit less impressive, it's a bit white, it's a bit washed out. Now I'm keeping it inside this water, not because it's not polished, it's actually polished incredibly well, but I'm just keeping it in there because as you can see, if I bring it up and I'm just holding it in front of the camera, I mean it looks okay, but because of the white body tone of the Coober Pedy, I need to retune my lights to knock it down a little bit. And I had the camera all set up for the cutting. So if I lower it just a little bit like this, the walls of the tub around here are actually shielding it from a lot of the light, and that indirect light looks a little bit better. Gives you a better idea of what the opal looks like at the moment. So I'll just keep it in there. I didn't polish as well on the back side, and I kind of took it fairly seriously, but as you can see, it is definitely the more washed out look. It didn't face overly well. It's still got a thin film of white potch over it, and the biggest problem with this stone is that center bit there. If I do take it out, oh no, it's even easier to see like this. If I wave my finger behind it, you can see in the middle here, that where that divot is, that was where the sand went in really deep, and you can see my finger behind it. That's because it's getting really thin there. Now if I was to cab this stone, I would have lost everything except for one little triangle bit right here. So right between my two thumbs, that didn't have sand in it. The rest of it, we were attacking sand the entire journey. You can see there, that's where that wedge was near the start. That big cut in went all the way down to that fine point. That's when it petered out. And you can see it is getting pretty thin. Now, the question will be, is the carving worth it? This took a really long time because of how undulating it is. If I bring it out and we just focus on the way the light dances across it, you can see how undulating this surface is. These carvings take a long time. It is so much easier to do something with a single curved face, but once you start doing this stuff, it is super time consuming. And on top of that, how would I ever set this? It's too fragile in that center section here. So right along here, it's too fragile to set as is because that will certainly crack as soon as you start closing claws or bezels over it. I think what I would do if I was going to set this one rather than keep it as a carving is to slice right along that line. Unfortunately, you'd slice along there. This end here is a lot thinner. That could be used for inlay. I mean, if you look at it, it's got a nice little pinfire pattern of all the colors, and you'll be left with this over here, and this you could work with. It's got a bit more of a broader pattern too in that little high section there, and in the section underneath, that's where that pinfire kicks in again. So you get a nice little broad, fairly playful color bar there. And even as a freeform, that would be settable. It's thick enough, it's strong enough. You could even do it from this direction and get a little bit of a teardrop if you wanted to. But yeah, as is, not an overly useful stone. Great to look at, but not very practical. Certainly does save a lot more material though. If you were just grinding the edges in until you lost all the sand, you would end up with just this tiny little triangle here. So those are always the things you're tossing up. And to be honest, if you've really got more time than sense, you could carve everything just to remove all the inclusions and then get it to a state like this as a rub, don't go full polish, and then decide where to go, and maybe you will end up choosing to cut, slice and dice and get yourself a usable stone for a pendant. It's always an option, you can always cut twice. This will now sit in a tub of water until I decide what I'm going to do with it. Most likely that exact plan, I'd slice and then make a triangle using this as the face, or maybe even go double-sided and reshape this so that it suits that triangle shape as well. Anyway, I'm starting to go a bit downhill in terms of health, so I'll wrap it up here. Hopefully that helps out. It was a very complicated piece, and I just wanted to focus on the green hard resin burr because that is the new crucial step for me. Since moving away from the Diamond Pacific Nova points, the green burr, the 400 grit, is basically like the 280 with the Novas. It's super important to get that transition from the sintered diamond through to a final polish. If you can't get that step right, you're gonna not have a great time. All over the place you'll see these little non-removable little scuffs. You've got to get all that gone, got to get that frosted look, and then you can get to a good final polish as well. Anyway, good stone. Pretty happy. This came out of a parcel from the Blacklighters, and that parcel in particular made its money back on the first stone, so everything I've been carving since has just been pure fun and games. Good stuff, good luck with your carving, hopefully it works out as well as this, if not better, and I'll see you in the next one.